Christ and beyond the service. I'm so excited to interview another good friend of mine. Dean Vernon's with us tonight. He's a former Secret Service agent and a lifelong friend. And Dean, welcome to the show. It's good to see you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
So, what's been going on? You doing good?
I'm doing well and enjoying some retired life.
Yep.
It's hard to believe last month I've been retired for 3 years now, so it's gone quick, but a lot of blessings, more than I deserve.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, what we're going to do tonight, we're just going to talk for about an hour. Podcast is kind of about an hour, and I just want the folks to get to know you. Some people watching this will know who you are, and this will be old news to them, and some people don't know who either one of us are.
Right.
So, just what I wanted to do to start with is just sort of give the audience an overview of who you are, where you're from. Let's talk the early life, like kind of where you grew up,
Sure.
where you went to school, how you got married and kids, and then we'll kind of get into the career and stuff in a minute.
Okay. So I was born and raised in South Jersey, a little suburb, Burlington County, just outside of Philadelphia. All my immediate family's there. That's the area where my dad was born and raised. Um, I finished high school in 1984 and then went to college, came down to North Carolina, went to, at the time, it's Pfeiffer University now, but I went to Pfeiffer College. Um, had an offer to play basketball, so I was able to do that for 4 years. And while I was there, I met my wife Lisa. She and I started dating our sophomore year in college, and matter of fact, next month will be our 33rd wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. That's pretty rare these days.
It is. I'm very proud of that. It's a lot of give and take,
Yeah.
but that's what marriage is all about.
Sure.
As far as our family, Austin is our oldest son. He was able to go. He went to Davidson College for undergrad, and then went to Princeton University for seminary school. So he's actually a full-time pastor at Brownson Presbyterian Church in the Pinehurst
I
area.
did not realize that.
Yep. So he and my daughter-in-law Abby, Lisa and I have a grandson, Wesley. He was born about 19 months ago. Our middle child is Bailey. Bailey went to Campbell University and got her BSN. So she's a registered nurse. She's married, and her husband just finished last fall serving his commitment for the U.S. Navy. So he was deployed for a little bit. They were in Japan during the climax of COVID, but they were able to return home a year ago, and they actually moved back to the area June of this year. And then Drake is our youngest son. Drake actually went to, which is Pfeiffer University now, but Drake went to Pfeiffer and started out playing baseball there, and then graduated with a IT degree. So he's working for a company in Mooresville.
That's good. So you've got three and I've got three.
Yes.
And I'm assuming your three are, it's like, how do they have the same genetics? Because they all have different personalities, don't
Very
they?
true.
Yeah. And I have two boys and a girl, and my daughter's in the middle. And typically they say the middle child gets left out, but I can promise you my little middle child never got left out. She kept the boys in line.
Yes.
And I'm sure yours did too.
That is Bailey. Bailey is, if anybody that knows her, nobody's going to walk over her or push her over.
So I think having three, I always wanted three kids because I had my roommate in college had two brothers, and it was like that big family atmosphere, but not too crazy, right?
Right.
My mom's one of four daughters, so that I was kind of used to big families. I didn't want like 5 or 6 kids, but I thought three was a good number. And I think if you're gonna have to have a middle child, a girl's the way to go because you're gonna you raise boys one way and you raise a girl a different way. It's
Absolutely.
not cookie cutter, and so I think having the middle child as a girl was a blessing.
No, I definitely can relate to that. It's Austin being the oldest. You sit down, you have that father-son talk before you're going off to college, and we've both been to college, and we understand. That's really his first time being away from home.
Sure.
But that conversation with Bailey was completely different. It's just if you're a girl dad, you understand.
Sure.
Especially when your daughter's going off to school, and there's just more things to talk to about and worry about.
Yeah. One of the things I told my daughter, and I don't know if you said this to yours because you're a nicer human being than I am, but I told Ashley probably in high school or college for sure. I'm like, Ashley, I love you more than I love my freedom. And she didn't understand what I meant at that time. And listen, I have no desire to go to jail, but
Right.
basically, I'll do what I have to do. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it took her a year or two to kind of to wrap her head around what the heck did he mean? Because I never told her what I meant. I'm like, I need you to know that I love you more than I love my freedom. And I'm not going to do anything crazy,
Sure.
but I would if I had to, like any normal man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just children are different. You don't love one more than the other. It's just different.
Correct.
You know.
No, I mean, I had several similar conversations with Bailey about that as well. And I jokingly talked about it a little bit at her wedding when I was um, talking to my son-in-law and addressing those things. But yeah, I'm on point with you with that. And she clearly knew at a young age. And same thing with my boys. I mean, when it's your family, um, you you do what you feel is right and what you need to do. But the ultimate goal as the father and the head of the household is, you're the protector. So.
That's good. So you graduated. I don't think I knew about the basketball thing. So what position did you play?
I came in as a point guard, and then ironically, when I finished high school, I was only about 6 foot tall, and in my literally over one summer, I grew 3.5 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also young, Scott, because I started my senior year of high school. My birthday's in October.
Mm-hmm.
I was 17 years old
Oh,
when I started my senior year.
okay.
So I was 18 when I first started college.
Yeah, that is young.
But in New Jersey, with the cutoff, October 1st is my birthday.
Okay.
And so that was a pivot point. And, there was a time when it was a challenge at times athletically because I was always the youngest in my class and, trying to navigate through that. Well, when I got to college, unfortunately, I broke my ankle my freshman year. So I had to redshirt, but that gave me that year to kind of get back to, um, from a physical standpoint, just get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. But then I moved over to shooting guard. So I was fortunate too, and I don't, you know, I'm honest from the standpoint that I was good enough to make a college team, even though Pfeiffer was a Division II in a high school. Uh, never never started a game. Definitely a role player. There were more games that I never played than
Yeah.
there were that I did play.
Yeah.
But my dad taught me at a young age what it meant to put team over yourself.
Sure.
And so I was able to understood what my role was. And obviously, competitively, you wish you got to play more, but I wouldn't trade any of that experience for anything. I mean,
Yeah.
my teammates are some of my best friends. Just last year, we had a huge reunion at Pfeiffer for all the basketball players,
That's
and
great.
all the coaches came back. So it's just those relationships and friendships, that you cherish.
Yeah. There's nothing quite like a team sport. I played baseball and football. I went out for the basketball team twice and got cut twice. So I realized, oh, I'm not a basketball player.
Right.
So I wrestled my sophomore year in high school and got destroyed. I think I won 2 matches. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a wrestler either. So whether it's baseball, basketball, or football, it's a team sport, right?
Yes.
And there's, I try to say this, I've said this before, but the little kids and they're kind of smart aleck sometimes, like, there's no I in team. And they're like, well, there's a me. I'm like, yeah, but you're kind of missing the point. There is no I in team. And it's important to put others first. And
Yes.
the Bible talks about that, which we'll get into our faith here in a little bit. But like being selfless versus selfish. And when we start talking about the Secret Service job here in a minute, I don't know if you experience the same thing or have the same opinion. You probably do. You could tell the guys on the job that had played team sports.
Yes.
And listen, there's nothing wrong with golf and swimming and
Right.
running marathons. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
that. But like being a team-minded
Yes.
guy is, I think there's.
Just having that mentality of a team concept, but we're all working for the same outcome, same goal. And when you're in sync with that, that's what the beauty of team sports gives you that I don't think you can get in other areas and other places.
Yeah, I agree.
And it has such a profound impact on you as a person, your personality, allowing you to grow. And again, I say it over and over and over again. Relationships are at the end of the day, that's what matters most.
Yeah. Well, wasn't going to say this just yet because it just kind of really came to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're laying on your deathbed, like if we're fortunate enough to be an old man laying there dying of cancer or whatever, just old age, you're not going to be thinking, "Oh, I wish I'd have stayed at the office a little bit longer." You're going. The people around your bed are going to be your family.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be. Now, I'm not saying there aren't coworkers. There are some real friendships. Like you and I have a good friendship.
Yes.
But like you get what I'm saying. Like work is work. And like with the Secret Service in particular, it's like if Dean Vernon or Scott Bryson don't show up today, the show goes on. But it's like kind of like the NFL next man up.
Yes.
It's a mentality like next man up. We got to keep going.
Yep. And that, it's fair to say most of us are type A personalities, very goal driven. You don't accept failure. Failure is not an option. We both could agree. We've heard that plenty of times with the Secret Service. We don't get a makeup day.
Yeah, which is unfortunate that some of the things that have happened lately to President Trump.
Yes.
45. I like calling him 45, but
Right.
no disrespect meant. But I keep saying we. It's not we anymore. It's they. But I'm still going to say we. But we as law enforcement in general have to get it right every single time, and the bad guys only got to get it right once.
Cool.
Whether it's on a traffic stop or protection.
Right.
Military same way. You got to go out and doing the patrols. They got to be on point every time. The bad guys only got to set the IED. You only got to get the IED right one time.
Right.
So, I think that the way the world's gone, this DEI stuff, it sounds kind of good on paper and it looks good. And I'm all about equal opportunity.
Right.
I really am. But I'm also for the best person for the job, man or woman, right? Black, white, green, or purple.
Right.
Can you do the job? And we've both worked with some outstanding females in all of our jobs.
Absolutely.
100%. But whether you shouldn't get a job based on your sex or your race and things like that. And I think the Secret Service is kind of going down a slippery slope. I don't know if you've been keeping up with any of that stuff lately, but I just think the guys on the boots on the ground are awesome. It's kind of the head shed that I think might, and there's some good people in the 8-4. I still know there are a couple good people up there, but there's also some I call them company people, and I think it's like it should be mission driven. It shouldn't be budget driven or whatever else.
No, I agree. It kind of, listening to you talk, it takes me back to, when I first got hired and went to Beltsville for our initial 3 or 4 days. So we were at Raleigh Training Center, and I'll never forget this. I remember. And I don't remember the SAC at the time that was overtraining, but he had come in and addressed our group. So when I got hired, which was just prior to you getting hired, as you can recall, we were coming off the Clinton time from the government standpoint, where the government was downsized. So the Secret Service and other federal agencies were trying their best to get people hired. So my SATC class was doubled up. So we had 48 in there. And I remember him coming in and just, one, congratulating us for being there and accepting the challenge of wanting to be a Secret Service agent. But I'll never forget, he, as serious as he could be, he looked to the whole class and he just said, "You guys have to realize that for every one of you that's sitting here, 200 people didn't make it." And so it was, I walked away with that. It's great because then when you self-reflect, you look at, okay, I made the right choices. I was fortunate in the home that I was raised in. But there were times, as you would agree, where I could have made very poor choices that would have affected the outcome of whether or not the Secret Service could hire me or wanted to hire me. Sure. And so that was kind of what I took out of that personally was, I've never been, and you're the same way, I've never been someone that's conceited. I don't talk a lot about what I do. I feel like the way you carry yourself on a daily basis, the way you treat people, be respectful, that's more important. That speaks volumes compared to, you self-promoting yourself all the time.
Yeah, I think it's been my experience too, known some really stellar people throughout our careers. Yeah. I wasn't in the military, kind of regret that,
Same
you know.
here.
But we could talk about that a whole nother time. Like, you know, there were no wars, right? Like I graduated high school in '90, and I like, oh, you play football or whatever sport for as long as you can. You get a degree, you get a wife, you get a job. That's what I thought. You know, I highly regret not going to the military, especially since 9/11. But by 9/11, I already had 3 kids. That ship had sailed for me, and I was an agent and all this other stuff.
Right.
So I love my country, and I'm a very big patriot, like I know you are. And my mantra is always try to be is like faith, family, country. That's what I try to do. I don't get it right all the time, and I know you feel the same way. But I've known some really stellar people in that line of work. And my point is, most of the guys that are real door kickers don't talk about it.
Right.
You know, it's the guy that's running, and I was on CAT for 3 years, and I wasn't in the military, but I was in a room full of every former Marine, like we had a couple SEALs in there, we had a former Delta guy in there. They didn't talk about anything.
Right.
Well, I was a scout sniper. Were you? Were you?
Right.
You know, or I was in the Corps. If the Corps so good, why'd you leave after 4 years? Like I just got tired of hearing about it. It's like the guys running their mouth probably hadn't done as much as the guy sitting in the corner being quiet.
That's so true. When you just mentioned about the SEALs, there was a classmate of mine that was a Navy SEAL, and he kept quiet. He didn't speak about it, didn't want to bring it up. But unfortunately, we were at the range one day shooting, and some of them were having a tough time. And then one of the firearms instructors kind of let it out about, you know, who he was and what he did. And then I always felt bad for him because that was completely the opposite of what he wanted. Yeah. But to your point, like if you met him on the street and looked at him, you know, I'm not saying he doesn't pass the eye test for a SEAL, but he's not somebody that, you know, would strike you and say, oh, you know, that's what he does.
Yeah. Quite professional.
Totally. You know, that's one thing I'll say for sure. And I had another buddy of mine in the Philadelphia field office where I was assigned that was also a former SEAL, and he actually finished SATC, the class before you, and so his dad was Navy and military. So
that's really cool. So let's talk a minute about your first, well, if you want to, we can go back about the hiring process. It took me 2.5 years because I failed the Treasury exam the first time and I had to wait a year. So how long did it take you to get on? And kind of walk the people through. The process is totally different now. Do you want to talk a minute about like how you, the length of the process and where you started and all this good stuff?
Absolutely. That's a real good question. So let me start with a good friend of mine, Mark Ritchie, who you know. Friends with from this area here. Mark was my training officer when I got hired at Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office. And then Mark proceeded to go on and get hired by Secret Service, and then they put him in the Raleigh RO office. And Mark stayed in touch with me the whole time. And he told me when he left, he said, I'm going to stay on you. He said, you need to apply. You need to look into this. And probably for the first year, you know, I'd listened to Mark, but I was like, nah, I said, you know, I've got some loyalty to Sheriff Kennedy. You know, he gave me an opportunity to have a job when, you know, I was trying to get into law enforcement. So let's just say, as time went on, another year or so, Mark finally came home one weekend from Raleigh and we went to lunch, and he's like, look, Dean, he said, I want to reach out to some guys in the Charlotte field office, but you need to at least give it a shot and give it a try. So I started researching it, and to your point with the Treasury exam, you know, Mark was telling me a little bit about it, but he's like, look, you're going to have to really, you know, study a little bit, be prepared for it, because there's, I don't remember what the percentage of the failure rate was the first time, but like you shared with me. So where I'm going with that is I end up applying, but from the time that I applied until they offered me the position was 15 months.
Wow, that's fast.
And so I give a lot of credit to Mark, because with the Charlotte field office, he was able to, you know, make those phone calls and reach out, and, you know, things went, you know, really smooth. Now, when I finally got to the point where, you know, I was going to take the Treasury exam, the one thing that I was very thankful of with the Charlotte field office, the agent that was doing my background and processing me, um, they had a contact with a gentleman that just retired from Princeton Review Company, the company at the time that did the SAT scores. He moved from New Jersey to the Charlotte area. His primary, uh, I guess, work after retirement was he did the one-on-one counseling for the high school students to get ready for the SAT. Well, the Charlotte field office had made contact with him, and there was a couple agents. They would offer it to you if you wanted it. I think when I went through, I was maybe the third or fourth client that he worked with. And then, so when I first went to meet him for the very first time, he said, "I don't want to put any pressure on you." He said, "But I haven't had anybody not pass it the first time." So he's like, "I don't want you to be that first guy." So right away, in turn, I was like, "Oh, all right, put it on." So long story short, that really helped, and I was fortunate. I was able to pass it my very first time that I took it, and then go through the polygraph exam, and felt fortunate there as you've been through it. So my box was from the time I sat down and we went through the paperwork and I was polygraphed was right at 3 hours. Yeah. And I remember jokingly I was so always pride myself on being an honest person. We all have things that we're not proud of and make mistakes, but I went in there and I shared this with the agent when I was done because I asked him, I said, I know you probably can't tell me. I said, but how did I do? And he said, well, you should be the one to answer that. And he's very firm. And I said, well, if that's what you're saying, then I was 100% truthful with you. And he said, that's what we want. So I walked out of there, feeling better because I was just worried. I like going through that, especially with the Secret Service and how thorough those are and all of the questions that we have to be asked. Um, there's no way in my mind as a person I could have gone in there to intentionally be deceptive, show deception, all of those things. Like the only thing I want to do is be truthful with everything they asked me and show them what I was made of and I was worthy of, getting a chance to be offered a job.
Yeah. So I think I've taken 5 of them things. Not fun.
No.
The Secret Service one was it was torturous too.
It's on another level because I had some classmates that are good buddies of mine, people that as well that you worked with. But um, I had one buddy that he had like one or two inconclusive, and so he had to go back for his third one, and so that's unsettling too because you're like, look, I'm trying to be honest here. I just need to get through. But they have a job to do, and when you look at the role that the Secret Service plays, the mission statement, what you're tasked to do from a protection standpoint, from an investigation standpoint, and then tying all that in with your TS clearance. I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And one of the things that the service doesn't do, or they didn't, I don't know if they do now, they don't give a psychological eval. And so I think that's another, I think the box would still be hard regardless, but
Yes.
I took psych evals at different places, and I was like, well, I couldn't believe we didn't do one there. But regardless, you're not beating that. You're not beating that machine.
No, sir.
And the guy running or the girl running, you're not beating them.
Right.
So the best thing to do is just go in there and tell the truth.
That's
and
right.
if your life's work is good enough to get you to it, then they're going to take you. If it's not, it's not. Right. But you're not beating that thing.
No.
So you got hired and you processed through the Charlotte office.
I did.
And then you went to Philly.
I did. Just to step back for a second. So my youngest son Drake was born in November of '98. I was initially tasked to start my training in December of '98, but because of with Lisa with the pregnancy and she was running a couple weeks late, I ended up getting pushed to like January of '99. Mm-hmm. But initially, when I got my job offer, I was fortunate that I was going to get a position, a spot in the Charlotte field office. So about a week before Drake was born, the agent that was processing me had called me one night at the house, and he's like, "Hey, Dean, how's it going?"
Was it
I was
Bob
like,
Turner?
It wasn't Bob. No.
Rest his soul.
Yeah.
Bob, if it wasn't for Bob, I wouldn't have gotten the job. But anyway.
No, No, it wasn't Bob, but you're right. Yes, he was. Awesome, awesome gentleman. And he says, well, he says, I got good news and bad news. I'm like, okay. I said, let's start with the bad news and we'll finish with the good news. So he started laughing. He said, well, your, as you know, pins, they refer to them as pins positions. He said, your pin was taken out of Charlotte. So we don't have a opening for you to stay in Charlotte. And I said, so what's the good news? And then he said, well, you got to pick between New York City, Newark, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. So of course, Philly was the no-brainer because of that's the area where I'm from. I've got family that are in law enforcement. So, um, it ended up working out.
Yeah. I think it always does, right? As much as we try to finagle and move things around, I think God's like, dude, I got it.
Well, see, I'll go back to giving Mark Ritchie credit because Mark's classmate was Bob O'Donnell,
Oh,
and I know you know
Bobby's
Bobby.
a great man.
And Bobby was actually my
FTO kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Because once I got moved to the counterfeit squad, Bobby was like the FTO, and then Leo Jenkins was the ATSAC and over our squad. But that summer of '98, I had gone home up to New Jersey to visit my family, and Lisa, and we brought the, went up there, and this was a couple months before she, had Drake, and I remember Mark calling me, said, listen, my close friend Bob O'Donnell's up there. He said, I want you to reach out to him when you go up there and go over and meet him. Because I talked to Bobby a couple times on the phone, we just hadn't met. And ironically, I guess where I'm going with this is I think that played a part when it came to the Secret Service deciding, like, okay, what are my three options that they gave me? I got to meet James Washington, who was the SAC at the time. That day, I got to meet Leo Jenkins. And so, unbeknownst to me, I had that visit like June, July. Well, then I get that phone call, a week before Drake's born, and here we are. So again, but you know what? Being my faith in a Christian, that was God's plan all along. He opens doors when they're necessary, and he can close them as well.
Sure. Oh, yes, absolutely. I've had a lot of notes. I'm sure you've had some too.
Yes.
So you started in Philly. Did you start in the counterfeit squad or like electronic crimes? Or where did you go?
I started at the time we had check squad.
Oh, yeah.
I was fortunate because, I had some investigative experience coming from the sheriff's office. So I literally was only in the check unit for 2 or 3 months. And then I got moved over to counterfeit.
Yep.
And that's when I was able to, hook up with Bobby and work side by side with him. But and so I started in January '99. I finished at Beltsville in July of '99.
Yep.
As soon as I came out, I'm rolling straight into the election campaign with, Vice President Gore at the time and Governor Bush.
Yep.
So I was, my first 6 months I was with Gore pretty much on a regular basis. But the interesting is, so the 2000 Republican convention was in Philadelphia. So I was actually pulled off of my assignments with Gore and then put back in Philly because I ended up and working under Bobby. I ended up being one of the 5 assistant site agents at the Wachovia Center.
Yeah.
So they pulled me back, and then of course, all the planning that goes into an event like that. So
massive. Was that an NSSC back then, or was that not a thing yet?
I
don't know if that was a thing yet.
I don't think so. There was a classification for it, but I don't remember exactly what it was at the time.
Now you were up there with Scott Malden.
So Scott was
Eric Jackson and those guys. Yeah. Good dudes.
So Eric Jackson was came from Charlotte Police Department.
And I remember he come through. I remember him coming through.
And then of course Scott was at Concord PD with you. So
we're on the same shift together.
Yep. And that's initially I initially met you through Scott.
Yep. I think you came. I feel like you came up to me in the gym one day, Was it called Your Gym or whatever?
Yes, it was. Yes.
And
Sure.
so I was working out.
Yeah.
I think, if my memory's right, I think you walked up to me and said, "Are you guys going to Secret Service?" I said, "Yeah." And then we started talking, not knowing that your relationship with Mark, and you not knowing that I had a relationship.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the relationship you had, but like, I'm from Midland, and
Right.
I used to see Mark come in the Midlander on Sundays to eat.
Right.
Like, I'd come in there after church, and he'd come in, and I was like, "That's the guy going to Secret Service." Like,
Yeah.
I was so enamored,
Right.
And then he, just super cool guy, and just down to earth, and openly talk to me. But yeah, he encouraged me to try it and stuff
Yes.
like that. Just can't say enough nice things about
No,
him. And of course, Bob Roberts,
yes.
JB Robert, the
Yes.
old sheriff of
Yes.
Cabarrus County. Most of his sons are in law enforcement,
Mhm.
or were. And I met Bob at a Christmas Eve service one year when I was a sophomore in college, and that's kind of how I got the bug.
Gotcha.
I was kind of scared to talk to him. He's like a Secret
Yeah.
Service agent. He's going to be cocky, and he was super nice. It couldn't have been more down to earth.
Talking about the bug, going back to Mark Ritchie. So President Clinton had a campaign visit in Raleigh, and
Now he's sitting president at the
yes,
time.
he's sitting president at that time. So and I'm in the process at this
Okay.
point. I think if I remember right, I was 4 or 5 months in.
Okay.
So Mark called me and he said, "Hey, come to Raleigh." And he was funny. He said, "Put a suit and tie on, and just come and see what this job looks like from a distance." Of course, obviously he was working, so I
Yes.
wasn't with him. I just, I stayed in an area that he told me to stay in. But that's the that's at that moment when I drove home, I was like,
I got to do this.
Lord, I got to give this a try.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm smart enough to get through the treasury exam, all of that stuff. You start not totally second guessing, but you're just like, to me, I'm just talking out loud. I'm having this conversation. I'm like, all right, Lord, where are we going to go with this?
Yeah.
And see what happens. So, but I did. I had the fever after that visit.
Yeah,
Sure
it
did.
sounds very familiar, similar to what Al Story told me. He went to Georgia, or wrapped up his college career at Georgia, and they did a job fair and had a couple guys come. And after he heard their spiel and everything, he's like, "I have to do this job." And he didn't do it for a while. He became a sheriff's deputy for a while down there, and then GBI.
Right.
And about 5 or 6 years later, he became an agent. But and Al's awesome.
Yes.
But it's funny how you get the bug, you get bit. You know what I mean?
Very true.
And like I can remember me, like, I wanted to protect the leader. It just sounded like I didn't care who's in office. And this is before politics got so doggone divisive.
Right.
I go, my guy won this time, your guy won whatever. Like, it didn't define. It still doesn't define who normal people are. But like, some people, I almost like it's a God or something. It's weird. But culture's gotten super weird. But when I came on, Clinton was in office, just like you.
Yes.
Clinton was in, and Gore was in, and so, like, okay, so I'm doing stuff for them, and I do something for Bush, or different things like that. But like, you're protecting the office, and that's what always struck me about the Secret Service employees. And I hope it's still the same. It's like you were able to compartmentalize, because we have friends. I have friends that are fairly liberal.
Yeah.
But when we were doing the job, like, they checked that stuff home. So
Yes.
like I don't say like last name on this one, but like Alex, a good friend of ours, Alex, he's a liberal, but he did not do his job. Like, he still protected Bush, and he would have given his life for Bush, just like I didn't like Obama, but I would have given my life for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just were able to compartmentalize, and I don't know I'm hoping they still can do that. I'm sure they do. They probably wouldn't get hired. But that's what makes Secret Service agents very unique, I think, is that we're able to compartmentalize and go, okay, I don't really agree with this person's politics, but I'm going to go do my job because I'm protecting the office.
I totally agree with that. That's probably one of the most asked questions I had during my time as an agent. With my friends, some conservative, some liberal, but being point blank, like, I can't believe you take a bullet for so and so. And I'd always try to tell them it's not the individual. It's the agency that I'm working for, what it represents, and I always come back to that. It's the mission statement of the agency that I'm willing to accept and put my personal opinions aside to always do my job.
Yeah.
And I agree with you there. Like, that some of the most awesome people and friends that I've met were Some of them were during my Secret Service time.
Yeah.
But it was just that that mindset to separate yourself from all of the distractions and focus on point on the mission.
Yeah, and I was looking for that too because you were at the sheriff's department, I'd been at the
Yes.
police department, and you'd played college basketball, I played college football, so I was missing that camaraderie, that
Yes.
locker room atmosphere, just that alpha,
Yes.
mentality and selflessness, and that because I hadn't served in the military,
Right.
and I know I could have gotten it there, and I had it at the police department, I had it
Right.
at the football team. And so I was really drawn to that, aspect because the Secret Service is extremely diverse, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like FBI's kind of lawyers and CPAs and
Right.
different things, um, but Secret Service just melting pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what attracted me to them. It's like people can. No, I don't want to die any more than you do. I'm not a
Right.
freaking psychopath. I
Right.
don't want to take a bullet for my favorite president.
Right.
I don't want to die, but um, I think just that mindset, the willingness. It's like I'm a patriot, and like I didn't serve my country in
Yeah.
uniform. That uniform, I served it in this other uniform,
Yes.
and to me, it's just like not everybody feels that way, and it's hard for me to wrap. Like, how can you not feel that way?
Right.
Like, don't you love our country? And people don't love this country anymore. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be here.
It's a shame what our country stands for and the opportunities that are here. And I think as Americans, we take so much for granted. And many times people are wanting handouts. They're not willing to go, and you and I have talked about this, just let's just say old school in our age group, as far as workforces go now, being dedicated, being loyal, being committed, um, understanding that, you know what, I gotta serve my dues, pay my time, um, to gain the experience and gain the knowledge to be able to um, climb the ladder, no matter what is whether it was at the sheriff's office, when I was there first, and then went to the Secret Service and then came back. Um, and it's frustrating because the other thing I've traveled overseas for trips and things, and it's humbling when you're in another country, and it makes you realize how lucky we are and how fortunate we are. But so many people don't see that. And I'm not saying not everybody's going to have the opportunity or the financial means to travel out of country, but just for our conversation and trying to make a point, like the whole immigration thing right now, it's such a hotbed. And I've told my friend, you have people that are coming from other countries that they're willing to lose their life to try to get into our country, to have a better life and to raise their families and all those things. Whereas our folks that are born and raised here in the United States, some of them could care less, and it's a shame.
No, it is. It really is. So before we move on past the Secret Service topic, do you have any memorable stories or anything funny? Because I like to always, like we're going to get deep here in a second.
Yes.
As deep as you want to go, and you want to wave off, we'll wave off. But like, we're talking about our faith and stuff
Yes.
like that. But like, I like to talk about a few funny things because there's so like people are like, oh, the secret. It's all so like, it's not all glamorous. It's not all serious. There's
Right.
I think law enforcement in general has a dark sense of humor.
Yes.
Because you have to, because you see a bunch of bad stuff.
Yes.
Secret Service not necessarily bad stuff like cops.
Right.
But do you have any cool stories or funny stories you'd like to share with anybody?
One comes to mind. So going back to 2000, so we just finished the RNC and the Democratic National Conventions in Los Angeles, and I had some classmates that were in the LA field office. So initially, I was told that I wasn't going to have to go to Los Angeles because I was doing the RNC and I was, a site agent at Wachovia Center. Well, that ended up getting changed because they were short. So I go out there and ended up being on midnights. So I was on night shift.
That's always fun.
Oh yeah, and those that can recall back to when we had the convention out there, I was assigned to the VIP entrance area. So you've got all these, famous athletes and actors and actresses and all these people that, I see on TV, and now here I am, I'm face to face with them, when they come in. So there were, there are a couple funny stories about, them trying to come through security, and then, clothing issues and all of those
Don't
things.
you know who I am?
Y-
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter,
no,
sir.
yeah, got that a few times. Um, but that's one that comes to mind. There was there was a time when I was in the counterfeit squad back in Philly, we had there was an investigation that was going on with the Nigerians and all of the counterfeit money that's coming into the U.S. And this Bob O'Donnell had been on that case for a couple years. It was way before I came in, but we had some fun that one summer, doing surveillance at night. Following people, taking pictures, that type of thing. And probably one of the coolest things was we ended up in this investigation. We posed as UPS drivers, and we delivered a printer to the Target house, unbeknownst to them. And then, of course, a couple months later, we were able to go back to that house. So the reason I tell you all of that is to set this up. So we finally get enough from the AUSA to get our search warrant and go in and hit the house. So we hit the house, and we're almost done with all the evidence collection and taking pictures and all that stuff. I'm standing in the doorway, and in Philly, you've got row houses, so they're very narrow. Um, and this particular Target house was a home like that. So I'm standing in the doorway, and I slipped. I was trying to get out of the way of one of the agents that was bringing some evidence out. Well, when I slipped, I I bumped into the wall, and it made a noise that just didn't sound right. So I was just like, man. So I tapped on the wall and making noise stuff. So I called Bob, and I said, Bobby, I said, this don't sound right. I said, man, I think there might be something in here. We take the sheetrock and stuff off. They had, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of dollars, but it was old, genuine United States silver certificates,
Wow.
and they were all stacked up, banded up in the
What were they
drywall.
gonna do with that?
I don't know the answer with the investigation from that
Did you
point.
charge them with that too? Was there a
So
crime for that?
I don't I don't remember, because I mean, I helped on the case, but I wasn't actually one of the main case agents that, when it was time to paper everything and meet
Still a
with
good
this.
find.
But it was so we get back to the field office, and Bobby's standing there with Leo Jenkins, and they're joking. I'm like, Dean, you got a golden egg up your butt. Like, you seem to you you seem to fall into something. but
That's great.
but it was really cool. We got able to recover all of that money. So that was kind of a fun
That's
memory.
good stuff. So we were talking a minute ago about memorable moments, Secret Service. Do you want to talk about 9/11 and where you were, or maybe a story or two
Absolutely.
about
Yep.
that?
So the morning of 9/11, I left my condo in South Jersey. So I'm driving over the Ben Franklin Bridge to go to work. And Lisa, my wife, calls me, and she was upset. And I said, "What's going on, honey?" She said, "Do you know what just happened?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "A plane just hit the tower in New York City." And, I just kind of paused for a second. And as soon as she told me that, in our G rides, we have the radio. Well, the duty desk does an all out call to all the agents that are coming in to report to the field office immediately. And so um, Lisa's telling me what's going on. And then, I told her, I said, well, I don't know anything yet, but I'm almost to the office. So proceed to the field office in Philly, which is in the Federal Green building. And our building's unique because we had, FBI was in there, ATF was in there, Customs was in there. Like, it was maybe. And the other big part about our building was it was a designated daycare facility for federal employees. Um,
Just like Oklahoma City.
yes, exactly. So I get in the, get down in the parking deck, and all the agents were all getting out of our cars, and a couple people have heard it on the radio and knows, and like, a plane just hit the tower. And so, we jump on the elevator, we go up to the field office, we all go into the conference room, and all the supervisors are in there, and they're like, get your vests on. And we ended up being assigned in teams with the marshals to go back outside to have an exterior perimeter around the building. Um, and what was, and while that's going on for the hour or two that we're doing that, our building ended up getting some bomb threats called in. So the next challenge for us is, because it's a daycare facility, we have spouses of the federal employees that are just driving their vehicles up close to the curb, and they're getting out, car running, doors open, and they're running up towards the daycare to try to get their child. Um, so, to say the least, that was very challenging on the cusp of what just happened in New York. And then we've also got bomb threats coming in because, as you don't know who these people are. There could have been a IED in one of the vehicles.
Yeah, because
So
at that time we didn't know. Like with anything, you don't know what you don't know. It's
that's
easy to be armchair quarterback now. At the
absolutely.
time, you didn't know what was happening.
No, absolutely. So we were able to get all the children out of the building safely and to their families and their parents. We had the perimeter secured, and then um, we were all called back up to the field office, and then just kind of at that point we're able to really get a briefing, through Leo Jenkins, Mr. Washington, the SAC, as far as uh, what was going on. So um, we stayed in the building, I don't know, for a couple hours, and then we were all told to um, go home, get your bags and stuff packed. Just if something happened and somebody needed to travel somewhere to do that. So I was home later that afternoon, and then I believe Leo is the one that called me, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to need you to go to Fort Dix. You're going to be the site agent for the arrival for POTUS for the next day." So there was another agent that was with me that lived in Philly. I can't remember his name, but I went and picked him up, and we both drove out there. And that was kind of crazy because, again, it's 9/11. We're on the cusp of all of this, and then of course, we were told where to go and had our credentials and met. So fast forward to 9/12, when the president, vice president, all the cabinet members, they all fly in on Air Force One and Two, and then they brought Marine One, Two, Three, and Four as well, and landed at Fort Dix, and then they they put all the folks on the Marine One, Two, Three, and Four, and then they went from Fort Dix with the Air Force fighter pilot escort to Ground Zero.
So that's the famous thing you see on TV with Bush with the megaphone.
That
That
it
video.
is. That is. Yep. That is shortly after they left Fort Dix to fly out there and land.
That had to
And
be like a surreal moment, didn't it?
it really was, especially once they all took off, and then understanding the magnitude, and then let's just be honest, when you have fighter pilots giving you an escort, things are
Things just
things are
got
pretty
real.
serious,
Yeah, things just got real.
real quick. So, um, and I had some classmates, obviously, that were assigned to the New York field office. So, thankfully, reaching out to them, and none of them were involved in uh, losing their lives. But and then holding Ground Zero, and then doing all of the evidence collection and stuff, we had a lot of agents from our office that were volunteered, and I did as well. But it's just, I was also with my rota. I was on deck to be on rota for the next month. So I offered to go to Ground Zero to help, but I ended up not going.
Yeah, I was stationed in Charlotte at the time, and I did the same because most of our management was from New York, you know.
Right.
I remember volunteering to go for whatever reason. I never got, never got picked. I wouldn't have been doing anything
Right.
super special, just probably going through rubble or
Mm-hmm.
doing evidence or whatever. But
Yes.
I wanted to be involved. Like I was mad.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
sure every red-blooded American was just mad, and that's why probably a lot of people went and joined the military the next day. Like
Yes.
I'm gonna go kill the bad guys. That ship had sailed for me because
Mm.
I was 31 or whatever, 30,
Right.
31, and 3 kids, and I was a couple years into my Secret Service career, so I
Right.
wasn't gonna quit and go join the military, but I sure thought about
Sure.
it.
No, you're right with the age part because you go back to when I got hired and when I got started. I was the oldest male in my training class. There was one female in my class that was like 2 months older than me, but I was 32
You were.
when I started with Secret Service.
Excuse me. We had a couple of older people in my, like, I think the cutoff's 37. I think it
Yes,
is, and because the retirement.
correct. Yep.
We had Teresa Hudson, God rest her soul. She passed away a few years ago. She's an awesome lady. She was about right at the cusp, 36, 37. But she was a really, really good agent.
Yeah.
She'd been in law enforcement her whole career.
Okay.
But it's funny because I was going through it like 26, I think, and she was 10 years older. So I was like, I didn't know then, but 10 years makes a big deal.
Oh,
36
absolutely.
is different than 26,
Yes.
and 46 is different
Right.
than 36. So
Well, and then with
everything's got a shelf life.
it does, and then just with our PT requirement every year, having to do that and stay in shape, which I'll give your accolades for staying on and then putting your name in the hat for CAT and getting selected. That was that also reminds me, Tim Geebles was in my field office.
Okay.
And and I ended up finding out later from Scott Malden that Tim had actually made CAT. But I remember going back to, we were talking about like the camaraderie and team sports. That was the one thing that was very apparent when I got to Philly, not knowing anybody. All the guys and gals that were college athletes, we were the ones that kind of connected and
Sure.
doing the PTs together, running and going on long runs. And I remember Dan at that time, Tim was like, that was one of his goals.
Yeah.
And Tim's a big guy. I mean,
big guy.
he played football. I think
He
it was
started Naval Academy. And I'm not sure where he ended up.
he went, if I remember right, Scott, I think it was Indiana State was where he finished his football career.
I've never seen a man that big that can run that good. He could outrun me, and he was like 270. Maybe not 270. He was 250, 260. Big O lineman, and he used to piss me off.
Oh, yeah.
We'd be running, because you know how much he talks.
Yes.
We'd be running, and he'd be talking. I'm like, how can you talk right now?
Right.
Like, I can't.
Yes.
He's a machine. I never seen anything like it.
He was, and in Philly, he was just trying to, he wanted to be ready, when it was time to go to DC.
He's a good guy, man. He was a phenom. Like, to be a big dude and to be able to cart, like,
Yes.
I would think, oh, he looks like a strong guy, probably bench press you, but
Right.
or a Volkswagen, but he could run.
Well, see, ironic too, like you made the comment earlier about, seeing Scott Malden on TV with President Ford when he had to go to the hospital. I remember after the January 6th incident and Vice President Pence and his family, were being escorted. And I remember seeing the clip where Tim comes walking out first. And of course,
was he the sack at the time? Was he the sack or D-sack?
If I remember right, he was the sack.
He retired as the sack, or he made sack.
I think he was the sack at that time, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw Tim, my wife and I, Lisa and I, were sitting there watching TV, and I'm like, "There's Gibbs."
Yeah.
So
it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still see guys that I know, that I recognize. I've been gone 2 years, so guys are starting to retire. But
Sure.
I
Yes.
still know some of the guys. Obviously, some of the older guys that have stuck around.
I was fortunate this past March of this year, my mother and father-in-law, my wife, and my youngest son Drake and I got to go to Hawaii for the first time, which I, reached out to you to give some tourist tidbits on where to go and where not to go. And I think I shared with you, but so Paul Quick was in the Philly field office with me, and Paul one day was just sitting around talking, and he was talking to one of the agents in there that knew me, and they're like, "Man, I wonder what's up with Dean." So it was so cool. So Paul immediately goes to LinkedIn, finds me, hits me up, and then we started talking. And I had told him that we were going to be going to Hawaii in March, and had the best time. One night when we were in Honolulu, he and his wife met me for dinner. So it was just really neat to catch up with him.
That's good.
So got a got a picture of he and I together. I'll shoot that to you.
Yeah.
So, but
Is he
that
still up there?
he is.
Yeah.
He sure is. He's under 2 years to
To
consider
mandatory.
for retire. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but they've been blessed over there, and he and his
Oh,
wife
yeah.
just built a new home while we were there in March. And he said, Dean, he said, when I retire, we're staying here.
They were staying there.
Yeah, they sure are. So, but it's just that's why I go back again with relationships and stuff. I mean, I haven't, truthfully, I hadn't seen Paul since I left the agency, and just staying in touch.
Yeah. That's 20-something years.
Absolutely. And it was so funny because they walked in and he's like, I said, man, you hadn't changed. It's like, you hadn't changed either. It's like, what's your secret?
That's funny.
So,
That's good stuff.
but as we both agreed, I said, well, the Lord had some doings with that as well.
Yeah.
To keep us safe and in good health.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up the Lord,
Mhm.
we've talked about him a little bit a couple times. I just want to. We talked earlier. I think you said 33 years.
Yeah, this next October 11th.
Okay, 33. That's a
Will
long
be-
time.
Yes.
Elizabeth and I have been married 28, which is also pretty long
Yes.
today's standards. So this isn't my interview; it's your interview. So tell the people what's your secret. Like, how do you? Because marriage is hard. I love my wife, and
Yes.
I know she loves me, but marriage is hard. It's a give and take, roller coaster, however you want to describe it. Raising kids is also hard.
It
I
is.
love my kids, but raising
Yes.
kids is hard. So, what's been your sort of secret recipe for success?
The biggest thing is that I've always gone back to is having the communication line, and on its face, it sounds great, it sounds easy, but as marriage is give and take, and I'm I'm more guilty of it than Lisa in that times when I'm not communicating, I'm shutting down, I'm not talking. It's you let the job in law enforcement, you know. Take over your emotions at times, and it puts up these walls. And so um, it's a huge challenge to work through it, and then just knowing that again it's give and take. And I would say the other thing too is don't be afraid to say I'm sorry, I love you, but most importantly, admit that if you said something that was wrong or made a mistake, own up to it. Don't have that mentality of I never do anything wrong, and it's my way or the highway. Um, Lisa's been a great support system. As you know, if you're in a law enforcement career, it's very similar to the military minus the travel. But that's the one thing that the Secret Service job does expose families to, with the road of travel when you're away extended times, and especially if you're in a campaign year, how much you have to be away. So, like my time up in New Jersey, Drake was just born. Drake was, I don't know, 8 months old when we moved up there. And as soon as I graduated, I hit the road with Gore. And so Lisa's got to be the mother and the father, and doing all the homework and getting the kids fed. And so always just having that appreciation of what your spouse does and what it means to the family and all of that. And she always, when I had to make that tough decision about leaving the Secret Service, um, she never once came to me and was like, the ultimatum, like, it's either me and the kids or the job. That was one of the things. And so where I'm going with this with my faith is I was in Boston. We just had an open event with Vice President Gore at the time in Nathaniel's Hall in Boston, open area. So we finished that visit and went back to the hotel. It was a Saturday night, and I was flying back to Philly Sunday morning. But part of my testimony at that point, I was really struggling with, Lord, is this what I need to be doing? Am I making my commitment to my family, to my wife, to my kids, or am I putting the job in front? Like I was just lost. And so I get in my hotel room and change my clothes, and I just dropped down on my knees and just started praying, and then got emotional, started crying, and just like, Lord, I feel lost. Like at that moment, I completely surrendered myself to him, and I just told him, I said, I don't know where this path is going to take me, but I'm putting all my trust in you that you're gonna guide me in the direction that I need to go in. And that was a tough thing. But then I will say, when I got back to the field office, and I went and talked with Leo Jenkins, and he Leo to me was, I lost my father about 7 weeks after my daughter was born. So my father was 59 when he passed away, and I told Leo this before I left the field office, to come back to North Carolina. Leo, in a lot of ways, was my dad when I needed a dad, and just he put aside the job. It had nothing to do with his title and his career, or me being a fairly new agent to the Secret Service. It was just that human connection of what you're going through. Talk to me, and we'll figure it out. And when I finally, I made that decision, Leo was the first one that I told, and of course he went and told, Mr. Washington, the SAC. And Leo actually got a little emotional, and we had our moment, and he hugged me, and he just looked at me. He said, "You'll never know how proud I am of you for making this decision, because I've had personal struggles in my life where when I look at you, I see myself 3 years in, and you're making a decision right now that's putting your family over this job. And that's so much more important." And he told me, he said, "No matter what people say about you, if they, don't agree with the fact that you feel like you need to leave, your family is always going to be the most important thing." And so,
Yeah.
that was a big part of it. But,
I don't know him. He sounds like a really good guy.
was he was phenomenal. I mean, he was just like, we joke in law enforcement, like, you have certain people that are supervisors, but then they're like a cop supervisor. Like, they always are thinking outside the box in terms of putting themselves in your situation, and using common sense. I hate to say it, but a lot of times when people get promoted up the ladder, they forget the common sense choices that need to make. And I used to always joke, they start drinking the Kool-Aid, and they start changing their minds and decisions and how they were. And so Leo was never that way. He was always, what you saw was what you got. And he was always too, as long as you worked hard and you were honest and did your job, like, he would go through the wall for you.
That's good.
So
That's good. You said something that kind of caught my attention. You said you were sort of lost at that time. What do you mean by that?
lost in the standpoint that,
You were saved, right? You were.
oh yes, yeah,
But
I
you
was
just
saved.
meant like
I
sort
was
of metaphor.
I was yes, I was lost from the standpoint that, am I
You're struggling.
I'm struggling with, am I putting my family
Yeah.
as the most important thing in my life? Because it's God, family, and then the job.
Yeah.
And so that was just something that I struggle with, because I'll give you a great example. Back in the day, like our black travel bags, and then we had our Secret Service tags that were on them. My daughter Bailey, every time she saw my black travel bags, she just lost it. Daddy's going to be gone. Daddy's not home. And it was one of those things where black bag means daddy's gone. If she doesn't see it, then daddy's home. And I kind of segued that into my speech to her at her wedding, and I talked about this actual thing that we're discussing now, as far as the impact that, I mean, that was the thing that opened my eyes up to say to myself, okay, indirectly, just because of the job that I'm doing, it's having a tremendous effect on my daughter in a negative way.
Sure.
And that was the point when I said to myself, this, I'm not going through this anymore. Again, Lisa supported me. It had nothing to do with her saying, you know what, you better quit that job, or we're leaving and going back to North Carolina. And so that was sort of like the main turning point. So again, and I even, like, going back to when I was in the hotel in Boston, when I was, just on my knees praying to God and saying, you need to follow me. It's like, I said to him, I'm giving you 100% trust. I don't know what the future is going to be. I don't know what I'm going to, like at that point, I had no idea what I would do once I left Secret Service. Now, obviously, as we both know, I got back in touch with Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office, and Sheriff Riley, gave me my job back and returned. But
How was that? Was that a transition? How was that like personal life probably started getting really good? There, I would think like, okay, Lisa's supportive, but the kids are going to be super happy. You're probably in some turmoil because like, like, it's just human nature, right?
yes,
You attain this thing, but you're going back, you're doing what's right for the family, which by the way, I completely admire and think that's amazing because that's all that matters.
right.
How was the transition getting back into the sheriff? Were you received pretty well?
I
Was it
was.
weird? Or?
I would only say, Scott, the only part that was weird was like the folks that were my friends that I worked with for my first 4.5 years, and then of course I was with the Secret Service for 3 years. The people that came to the agency in that 3 years that I was gone that didn't know me, I'm not gonna lie, there was pushback, there was negative comments said, and like one of the things that was being said about me was, oh, he must have screwed up at Secret Service, and he's coming back, and because who's gonna, not putting the sheriff's office down, but I worked there, and then I got hired by Secret Service, who's gonna quit Secret Service to go back to where you came from, and my whole thing from the very beginning. Now, it was not an issue with people that knew me as a person, and I worked with them.
Well, it obviously wasn't an issue for the sheriff at the time.
No,
he took you back.
it was. Well, I will tell you a funny story with the sheriff when I ended up talking to him on the phone about possibly coming back. He said, Dean, he said, I love you, but have you screwed up there? Have you done something that I need to know about? And you're just going to go ahead and resign. No, it's you. And I said, no, Sheriff. I said, I want to bring my family back home. I want to bring Lisa back home and the kids. And he said, listen, he said, we've been friends a long time, but don't take offense to this. He said, but you need to give me somebody to call up there that's a supervisor of you that I can talk to. So I gave him Leo Jenkins' name and number. He literally hung up with me. He called, I called Leo and gave him a heads up.
Yeah.
Sheriff Riley called him, and Leo was completely, no, he's not done anything wrong. He's truly wanting to come home for the family, and I admire him for it. So he hangs up with Leo, and then Sheriff Riley calls me back and he's all right. He said, I'm good. So got in touch with Sergeant McClure at the time, and then just did all my paperwork and came back. So
that's great.
But that transition you talk about too, I never spoke openly about it, but you have to be honest. That first 6 to 8 months when I left Secret Service, because I was still in touch with a lot of friends, and then I'm back down here and getting my life started all over again at the sheriff's office. That was tough, and as you and I both know, I mean, I took a huge pay cut leaving the Secret Service to come back to the sheriff's office. But there again, that's part of like my witness statement and testimony to the Lord. I mean, the Lord has my life already planned out. Yeah. He knows the good and the bad and the final outcome, and it's just it's up to me to have faith to follow the path that He's going to put in front of me. Doesn't always mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't always mean that we're going to have answers for things, and we've gone through some tough family situation here real recently, which I really don't want to talk about in this interview, but you're aware of it. Yep. And know the magnitude of it. Yep. And again, it's just trusting in Him that the outcome was what it was, and as my family, we're going to get through it. Yeah. Just one day at a time.
Yeah, I'm glad that thank you for being transparent and open. I think all of the people I plan to interview are like-minded people, and I pretty much open books. I don't know that everybody's a Christian. I hope that they are, but They might not be. We're not going to just talk. This isn't like a Billy Graham hour or whatever. But I think it's important to share that, and I just appreciate your transparency and your openness. All the people I've interviewed so far have done that, mm-hmm. And if as a believer, that's where we get our moral compass from, right? Yes. That's God's word. If you're not a believer, I don't know where people get their moral compass. I don't know how they make it through the death of a child or a parent, because death sucks.
Yes.
Plain out.
Yes.
It wasn't supposed to happen, and it does. So death sucks, and divorce sucks, and all kinds of things are bad. Sicknesses like laying in bed, dying. How does a 2-year-old get cancer?
Right.
I can't answer those questions.
Right.
So without having faith in something, and for us it's Jesus.
Right.
I don't know how people make it.
No, I would say this all the time with my friends at the sheriff's office, and as you know, I tried out for our SWAT team in the sheriff's office in May, and I was 37 years old when I made our SWAT team, and proudly to say I was on the team for 17 years and stepped off about a year before I retired from the sheriff's office. And I used to, I've got some friends in there on the team, one in particular, that just, like you were talking about with you and Tim Gibbs, you're running and you're talking with Kat, same thing with SWAT. And, at the time, my buddy was, I would say, lukewarm Christian faith, but not all in. And we had a moment there where we were running, and he said, "Can you just explain to me what it means for Jesus to die on the cross and what salvation means and all that?" So we're running, and it was just God that day planned for me to be there with my friend while we were running. We usually do team runs. Well, that particular day, some of the guys went off in a different direction, and we just kept staying. So the two of us, and I believe the Lord had a hand in that, so I could have that one-on-one time with him.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, "Look, you got to understand one thing as a Christian. Being the man of your household, you're responsible for your household, and you have to answer for that one day when you go to heaven." And I said, "Right now, you can't answer full-heartedly that you're saved, your wife is saved," and then he had 2 small boys at the time, and so where all this is going is he started going to church, and was going to he went to I referred him to a church that I used to go to. I was at a different church at that time, and here's the just such an awesome. So Christmas Eve, I get a phone call from my friend. It's about 4:00 in the afternoon. And he's like, "Dean," he's like, "I know it's Christmas Eve." He said, "But my wife and I, we've got to get saved tonight."
That's awesome.
Have to get saved tonight. And I'm, he's crying. I've got tears in my face. I'm crying. I said, "Awesome." So I hung up with him, called my old pastor, told him what was going on. And pastor was aware of this person because he had been, visiting the church. So Christmas Eve, pastor and his wife get in the car. They drive over to my friend's house, go in the living room. Whole family gets saved.
That's so good.
And Christmas Eve.
That's what it's all about.
And that was the thing. Like, it has to be Christmas Eve. I want to be saved on Christmas Day. I want to be able to know that He's my Lord and Savior on His birthday. And I remember Pastor Marty called me. He got in the car, and just emotions. He's crying, I'm crying, and the one thing that just really stuck out that maybe he said, "You got to understand." He said, "When we look at the Lord's book of life, with next to that family's name, the Lord used you to bring them to salvation and get saved."
Yeah.
And so, it's from a Christian standpoint, and to this day, he's still one of my closest friends.
That's good.
But just having that connection and having friendships, but it takes on another level when it's on a strong Christian foundation and people know where you stand and what you do. And I'll sum it up to one of my daily prayers every morning when I came back to the Sheriff's Office of Secret Service, especially my time when I got to be a school resource officer at Northwest Cabarrus High School. Every morning I would just have my time where turn the radio off and I'm just talking to the Lord, outwardly praying while I'm driving. And I always, every day, I asked him, I said, "Lord," I said, let me be the hands and feet. Let me be the example that will be worthy in your eyes to make a difference
Mhm.
in each day.
Yeah.
And, that's always been, what I've asked for, and in the relationships I was able to form with the students, years have gone by, and, I could tell you many stories about, students that I kind of took under my wing, but I always would say it wasn't me, it was the Lord
Oh,
doing it.
sure.
I was just trying to be that vessel.
Well, I think that the Lord's going to do what the Lord's going to do, and He knocks and says, "Okay, I want to use you." And if you say yes, then good. If you keep pushing away, He's just going to go to somebody else. He's going to do what He's going to do. He's going to use you or somebody else. And one of the things I pray, is very similar to what you just said. It's kind of short and sweet. I mean, He knows our heart, right?
Yeah.
Before we even say it, and I'm just like, Lord, I know you don't need me, because He doesn't.
Right.
He's in the Holy Spirit and protects
Right.
anything. He doesn't need me protecting Donald Trump or whatever. By the way, I think he actually saved Donald Trump's life on that day too, by the way. But like whether I was Secret Service or any type of law enforcement, I just say, I know you don't need me. You don't need me. But if you choose to use me, make me swift and accurate. That's what I ask for. I want to be Johnny on the spot.
Yes.
And I'm a shell of what I used to be.
Yeah.
I'm an old man, but I still have those intangible things that I want to protect. I don't want to be a martyr.
Right.
But I certainly don't want the innocence taken.
Right.
And so that's where I'm at. And it's just nice to have a conversation like this on camera.
Yeah.
Because we talk about stuff like this off camera all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to see other men that are bold and not ashamed, because we're older now.
Yes.
But when I was younger, I was kind of embarrassed to talk about my faith and stuff. Like, people won't think I'm a weirdo,
Right.
I'm a Jesus freak, or
Right.
whatever. But I've gotten a little older, a little wiser,
Yes.
hopefully a little wiser, and so I'm just not ashamed about it anymore.
No.
And if people watch this and think it's great, then awesome. If they think we're quacks, they probably turn it off. So
Right. Well, I'll go back again. The Lord's going to open doors, and He's going to close them. But in summation of what you and I just shared with each other, we do have to be willing, and we do have to be bold, because when He wants to use you and He opens that door, we have to be cognizant that this is an opportunity that the Lord's put in front of us, and we need to, take advantage of that.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, you're my first in-person interview. I'm very rusty at this. I'm very green, but thanks for entertaining being patient with me and kind of coming at the last moment. And it's always good talking to you. It's really good to see you.
It was great, you calling me today and us talking about this, and appreciate you, man.
I
Love you, brother.
Love you too. Thank you, brother. All right, buddy.